if you're tuning in to learn about the figure that's on the thumbnail, there's a bit of a boring introduction. So don't turn off, just skip forward until you get to the picture of the figure. I'm not clever enough to put them little stops in. So you're going to just go whiz through till you get to the figure and then you'll be all right. Okay? I'll just give you a sec, all right? Have they gone? They've gone. Right, okay. Now, they've had to go because the first bit is about Parkinson's. Don't stop. Don't turn it off. It's not about Parkinson's. That's part of the introduction. It's relevant. Trust me, I'm not going to cry. And if you watch the bloopers, I'm not going to fall off my chair. Right? So, here we go. Hi, it's me, Galen. Galen's got Parkinson's. Now, about 2 years ago, my Parkinson's was so bad that I'd stopped wargaming, really. I'd stopped painting. I went to the Wargames Club, but friends were having to throw dice for me because I was chucking them over my head. I couldn't measure anything. I couldn't move figures without knocking everything over. I couldn't paint. I had a friend painting for me, etc. And then, about a year ago, 18 months, I started realising that that was soft and I was going to stop being a wet head and I was going to fight back. At which point, I started going to the gym, started toughening up and stopped whining. And part of that was I began buying figures from eBay that were very badly painted and just touching them up, really. So, and I really enjoyed it. Then I thought, well, ooh, hang on, I've got loads of old figures. I mean old, going back 1974 vintage. I could repaint them. And I did a lot of them, but I then had a sort of, I don't know what it was, a sort of odd feeling about they deserve not to be repainted. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure some of you know what I mean. They've earned their chips and biffs. They've been played with, they've been wargamed with. They are what they are, and maybe I should be leaving them alone. So they went in a box. I'm nearly at the end of this, trust me. So, New Year. Today's New Year's Day 2026. And I thought, what? Sort of, I suppose you sort of think about things, don't you? And I've got old diaries. I started keeping a diary in 1968. So I can go back to my diaries and I can look at games we had and clubs I went to and meetings and figures I bought going way back. And yeah, those chaps in those boxes, I've resolved, New Year's resolution, deserve to be on the table. They deserve to be having role plays. They deserve to be playing Dungeons and Dragons like they were built to do, like I used them for back in the late 70s, early 80s. Now, I emptied out the box, and some are Ralph Arthur, some are minifigs, some are Hinchcliffe, some I've no idea what they are. Well, that's not true. There is a way we can find out what they are, and I thought you might be interested. So I've picked out a figure with no discernible markings to tell us who he is, and I thought it might be interesting to have a look at the figure and for me to tell you how you can identify figures from various little historic clues which we as historians of wargaming, when people come to us with figures and say, what's that? This is how we do it. So that's it. Right, those people are coming back now. So I'm going to shove the thing in. I'm not going to refer to that ever again. So didn't happen. So we're going to have a look at how to identify old Dungeons and Dragons figures where there is no obvious maker on the bottom. So for example, this chap, Raoul Parfer, 1979. It's even got a date on for us. The figure in front of you has no markings at all, and believe me, I've looked. There are photographs and pictures I'm going to keep showing you throughout the video of me scouring this figure with flashlights and scanning lights, trying to catch something through the paintwork. Nothing. But here are the ways you can tell with probably about 90% accuracy. If you brought me that figure, I could tell you and would say, as a historian of these figures, I will give you a 90% certainty that this is who made him. So the first thing I do is I have a quick glance, right? And I look at the moulding and I look at the shapes. I also look at the fact that behind the stanchions on the throne are carved areas which are holes. I'm going to take the figure off if you'll bear with me, because he's separate, right? And that's another clue, because if it's the company I immediately think it is, this is not a set. You bought the throne and you bought various seated figures. This one is a cultist. And you match them together. They didn't come as a pair. And if you look, there are holes in the casting there. If you hold it in your hand, this weighs a lot. Surprisingly heavy for the size. So that's something else that I've learned. I've found some more holes looking at it. On the silver band above the red band, there are little holes there. There are holes under the skull on the top. It's very naive. You can see that. If you look at those three jewels, diadems, whatever they are on the top of the throne, they are very crude. And if you look sort of where it joins the throne, it's very crude. I'm going to bear with me because I'm going to turn it round now. So this is the back. This tells us something else. Firstly, the oxidisation, the white marks around the windows. That, coupled with the weight, tells us that this is predominantly lead. I also test it with a magnet, and it's not magnetic at all, which is another sign. And it was at this point that I made a big mistake, which was put right by a friend of mine, Neil, who is a contributor to the YouTube site. And if you subscribe and you go to the comments, you'll see comments and helpful things that Neil is able to tell us. And he was able to sort it out for me. But I dismissed Citadel as the makers of this figure because it's crude. It is a mess. It really is badly cast. Now, Neil has helped me find that it's actually a model of a wizard's throne. Now, the reason it's crude like that is twofold. One, it was meant to be dungeon scenery dressing. It was never meant to be a standalone piece like you use today, where you're expected to have fancy casting at the back. That's not what it was. It was up against the wall in a dungeon, and the players were supposed to lean in and say, oh, there's something on that throne. Ooh, what is it? It's all spooky. because quite often they might even be playing by candlelight if they're getting well into it. The holes are to ease and relieve the weight for packaging, to make it cost less when you post it. And if we could see the bottom, please. Look at that. I have taken photographs. Just look at the casting on that and the moulding. There's no marks. I can tell you it's not Ralpartha because they write Ralpartha on the bottom. I can tell you it's not miniature figurines because they have extensive catalogues. And I'm going to put it between earliest would have to be 1978 because that's when Dungeons and Dragons comes out. And I think with this figure, 82, because they were made in the US, and after 82, the law as regarding lead casting changes, and they couldn't make the figures with this purity of lead after 82. So we can narrow it down 78 to 82. Now, I think we can narrow it down further because I would suspect that it's probably more likely to be 79 than 78. And I also suspect, and these are only suspicions, that it's pre-82. I think it might more likely be 81. I would go as so far as to say 81, 82. There you go. That's and I've put my money on the table. And if I'm wrong, well, you know, it's my figure. I'm not trying to sell it. I don't know who'd buy it. It's an ugly thing. If you look at the chap, at the cultist, sure he doesn't really like being called a chap. Again, if you see, look how the hands are moulded there to fit the throne. And when I put him back on his throne, grit your teeth, he is very, very, very delicately perched. Now, as regards repainting or restoration, my advice to a person that owned this nowadays would be, why? Why are you going to do that? You know, it's earned its biffs. And this is how you painted it back in the early 80s. What do you want to mess with it for? Although, having said that, they were designed to be repainted over and over again. But I suppose you could titivate the face, give it a bit more detail. It does, when you analyse it very carefully, have a moustache that you can't see. But you'd have to strip it down, or you'd have to do it with enamels, and just why not just leave it? And if people don't like it, oh, I think more fool them, because it's not wrong. It's not imperfect. It is old, and it is a veteran of its own campaigns. Those knocks are like medal ribbons, campaign ribbons. There's a mark there of every time it was played with, of every time it was packed away for 50 years. It's a good job they're not throwing me away, because I've got a few knocks and biffs after 70 years. All people my age will be upside down in bins. You just walk along and see a row of bins with legs peeking out where old people have been discarded. So let's give them credit, these figures. Let's luxuriate in their wonderful, quirky craziness and say, how lucky are we to have these figures around, so that we can look back and see where it all started and enjoy our own figures knowing that they have a history. They don't appear out of nowhere. They've developed, and generations literally of wargamers have been amazed by these. When this came out, it blew me away. Absolutely knocked my socks off. It was so exciting. And you are now getting excited about your figures. Please, it would be great if you still had some of them in 50 years. So before you get rid, just think which ones you're going to miss. Because I'm so pleased to have my collection. And I'm so happy that I've still got them. And there have been times in the past where I almost didn't. Happy New Year, that got all serious, didn't it? Ta-ra, Chuck!